Okay, so we're diving into something pretty big today.
Yeah.
You've brought all this, research and articles about how the pandemic messed with relationships.
Yeah.
Not just romantic ones, but, families, friends,
Hmm.
even, communities. I mean, it's clearly something you've thought a lot about, so I'm excited to dig into this with you.
You know, what's so interesting to me is the pandemic was like this huge social experiment. It made us all like rethink what really matters in relationships, you know?
Totally. Like,
Yeah.
the world just, I don't know, did a flip.
Yeah.
And everyone had to figure out how to stand up straight again.
Right.
So did it bring people closer together or, push them apart?
Well, it's just complicated, like life,
Right.
right? We saw both, sometimes even in the same relationship.
So let's start back in those first few lockdown days. Everyone remembers the initial shock. Couples are stuck with each other 2047. Families, split apart by border closures.
Mm.
One of the articles you sent talked about this couple who, just started dating and then, bam, lockdown. They end up quarantining together for 3 months straight. Intense. Talk about a relationship test.
That's a pretty extreme example, but yeah, it was a crazy time of adjustment for a lot of people. Think about it. Couples used to their space, routines, suddenly they're like tripping over each other all the time.
Right.
And then you've got the whole, global pandemic thing hanging over everything. So much anxiety, so much unknown.
And families, right.
Mhm.
Grandparents meeting new babies through windows,
Mm-mm.
virtual birthday parties. It's kind of heartwarming how people, found ways to connect, right?
Yeah.
But there was tons of loneliness, too, especially for people living on their own. It was like a whole mix of everything.
Absolutely. And that's where we start to see things splitting off. Some relationships really thrived under pressure.
Okay, so when we say thriving, what does that even mean? Is it more communication,
Hmm.
a shared purpose,
Right.
something else completely? You sent me some research about models of relationship resilience. What stood out to you?
What really hit me was seeing couples or families who use the whole mess as a way to grow closer. You shared a study about couples who did stuff like learning a new skill together online, and they said their relationships were stronger for it. I think that's huge. Making those shared experiences, even when you're apart.
Yeah, it's like finding those good moments in the middle of everything. But let's be real, not everyone was baking sourdough and having romantic dinners every night. Some relationships really took a hit.
For sure. For some people, the pandemic just blew up existing problems. You're stuck together, so those conflicts get magnified. Communication falls apart, stress everywhere. All those little cracks turn into huge rifts.
It's like that absence makes the heart grow fonder thing, but flip.
Yeah.
Being too close, especially when things are rough, can really expose those weak spots. So the world got smaller, and tech became the way to reach out. Virtual dates, Zoom calls, it was our link to the outside world.
Hmm.
But was it enough? Could it really replace being there with people?
That's the big question, right? It definitely helped bridge the gap, but
Yeah.
it's not the same as being there. We need that human connection physically.
Hugs through a screen just aren't the same.
No.
This is what I find so interesting.
Yeah.
How did it change what people want in their relationships? Did their priorities change?
For a lot of people, yeah, it was like hitting the reset button. What's important, what's not. Those sources about people basically reevaluating their whole friend groups, that's telling, right?
It is.
Qualities like being reliable, emotionally smart, being able to go through tough stuff together, those weren't just bonuses anymore. They became essential.
It's like the pandemic stripped away all the extras and made us focus on what really matters. So it was more than just a crisis, right? It was like a test, a crucible. We learned so much about how to build solid relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Open communication, being flexible,
Right.
setting boundaries.
Right.
That became crucial, not just for romantic stuff, but for friends and family too.
We've talked about that initial shock and how some relationships got stronger while others not so much.
Yeah.
But what about the long-term changes? Looking back on all this research, what really sticks with you?
It's the resilience of how humans connect.
Yeah.
We adapted, we figured things out, we leaned on each other in new ways. And even though things are different now, that basic need for love, for connection,
Yeah.
it's still there.
We've covered so much ground.
We have.
From those early crazy days to the maybe unexpected good stuff that came out of it, the pandemic definitely changed our relationships. So here's something to think about. Knowing all this now, how will you handle your relationships going forward? What will you put more effort into? What will you let go of?
That's a good question.
And that's our deep dive for today.
Thanks for having me. This was a good one.
Yeah, it was. Thanks for joining us, everyone.